Hello everyone, and welcome back to Building the Dream. In this podcast, I'm exploring the personal stories of some of the most interesting and impactful tech leaders. This episode is one of the 6 special editions that we record around the Climate Tech Summit that will take place in October in Amsterdam. My name is Leopold and I am the host of this podcast. Today I'm honored to introduce you to Rob van Straten, entrepreneur, serial executive, and currently the CEO of Skytree based in Amsterdam. Skytree develops direct air capture (DAC) technology to remove CO2 from the air. I'm curious about his motivation to join Skytree, his plans for the future, and how he sees the DAC market evolving. Welcome, Rob. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Leo. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. You have a great long career, and normally I actually ask a lot of questions about that, but maybe it's too much. So maybe how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I usually say that I'm in the autumn of my career, and indeed it's been a long journey. When you look at my past work life, I think there are 2 main chapters. The first one was local. Where I worked with a few others to establish small IT companies and exited them. And I worked for larger companies as well, but all very local. And then the second half of my career, I've worked on the global stage, always in technology, always in fast-growing markets, always in the ESG domain, combining purpose and business objectives. And that brought me to come on board of Skytree 2.5 years ago.
All right. And can you maybe share some of the highlights of that first stage, the local part?
Sure. I remember that with a few colleagues, we went from a company called Koning and Hartman at the time, in Delft to create our own company. And we had no idea what a wonderful company Koning and Hartman was. But we found out when we were building our own company, where we copied everything we had in Koning and Hartman. And quickly we became a segment leader in the Netherlands, dealing with all the big companies. And then we realized what a great company Koning and Hartman was.
And what was that kind of company?
It was a 600 people company in Delft, founded by Mr. Koning and Mr. Hartman. I think in the 60s or so. And it was an importer of technology. At that time, you had importers. Home supplier to fireworks, police, army, broadcasting equipment. The first mobile phones of Motorola were brought to the market, and then Koning and Hartman was acquired by Getronics.
All right. And you copied that?
Well, it was natural behavior. So that was really, a good experience. And it was a successful company we've created. At first, it was called Databox. Later, we changed it into, I think, QI Networks. And it was acquired again. And now I think it is part of the cybersecurity division of KPM.
And your role there? You were always the founder, CEO, or did you have like a specific role in the part?
I was co-founder, and I was leading marketing, sales, and the projects.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you moved at some point to EV Box.
Well, there were a couple of steps in between.
All right.
So a switch in my career was joining BWise, a company in the south of the Netherlands, Rosmalen. And that was a governance, risk and compliance platform, which was sold to enterprises around the globe. I led the international expansion of that company. And I think, after being 1.5 years in, we were acquired by NASDAQ and became part of the software division of NASDAQ. And I worked there for 4.5 years, spent half my time in the US, as we had a lot of clients in the US. We spread around the world, had clients everywhere. I was traveling a lot. And after 6 years, I joined a comparable company called SAI Global that was delisted from the Sydney Stock Exchange and required somebody like me with the experience of building global businesses in that space. We also had an education arm, so we We did compliance training for millions and millions of people around the globe around topics as modern slavery, anti-bribery, code of conducts. And then I joined EVBooks thereafter.
And EVBooks already existed, so
Oh yes. When I came on board, it was like 200 people. When I left, that was around the time that the IPO was announced through a spec at the time. That was the moment that I left.
and how was that experience? Was that your first real dealing with climate technology?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure, and hardware as well.
Yeah.
Which is completely different than software. Hardware is really hard, I can tell you. I mean, EVBooks was a great company. It's been recently in the news that it's sort of winding down, which hurts all the great people that worked at EVBooks. And we had a real leading position, great team, great business development, marketing. But as you can read in the newspaper, there were technical issues. So not for me to further comment on. But that was really a shame, as we had such a great company.
But if I summarize it well, your main skill then, what you probably practiced in your career, is scaling companies internationally, and you have a great experience in software, now also hardware.
Well summarized, thank you.
So that is why you joined Skytree at some point.
Yes, I joined Skytree in February 2022. Skytree is a spin-off of the European Space Agency more than a decade ago, where Max Beaumont, the scientist that worked on this technology, started Skytree through an incubator program. So he got a little bit of money from ESA, and he brought this technology from space to Earth.
All right. And you had some experience with hardware. You just mentioned that hardware is incredibly complicated, right, to build a business around. What makes hardware so interesting or so challenging to scale?
Well, if you compare software and hardware, with software you can make a change overnight and test it out on users.
Yeah.
With hardware, if you want to make a change, you have to first design it, prototype it, then order components, and then do your next iteration. So, I mean, with software, you can do MVPs, work together with customers and do quick iterations. With hardware, the velocity of innovation is so much lower. But I think we'll get to that, as this is a big driver of what we do at Skytree. But actually, I wasn't looking for a permanent position at all. I was sort of having fun as a strategy consultant. I worked almost full-time for my friends of R2D Little in Germany, boardroom consulting in EV charging, as that was my expertise. So I dealt a lot with Asian companies, French, German companies. And I had an easy job. I was sort of representing, let's say, the customer's voice, the view of the customer within the teams of R2D Little, or joining them with the customer sessions. So I had a good life, working during the day and doing other things at night. And in a few days I had left per month. I engaged with some startups from the Dutch startup scene. And one of these startups that came on my path was Skytree, Max Beaumont. And Max was working on sort of a similar application as the foundation from the International Space Station to take CO2 out of a cabin where people are. So at first it was the CO2 scrubber in the International Space Station. And what Max and his team of 8 people at the time were doing, they were developing a filter technology, a device that you can put in an electric vehicle that takes the CO2 out of the car cabin. And then when you take the CO2 out, you don't have to get fresh air from outside. We always think it's like oxygen. You need to have fresh air for oxygen. Oxygen is much smaller as a molecule, so oxygen is not the problem. The buildup of CO2 in the car cabin is the problem. This is why you need, also by law, by regulation, to get fresh air from outside. But if you take in fresh air from outside, you have to heat it or cool it when it's hot or cold outside. So with that technology of Skytree at the time, you could extend the range when it's hot or cold by 17%. And Skytree was very successful in doing tests and got fees to pay for its operation from a lot of large automakers, all the famous brands, including Lightyear, by the way. Okay. We had to get the filter back from the curator. But what Max started to find out is that the filter worked well, so the application was there. But before regulations change on passenger safety in car cabins, before companies like Volkswagen decide to put such a device in a car, then you're years down the line. And then if they decide to do that, will they buy these filters from an 8-people company, right? And even if they do, are you allowed to make any margin? As they're notoriously famous for squeezing their supply chain. So Max knew that he was in a dead-end street with his strategy. But he also had another idea, that is to build a device a little bit bigger that you could put in a vertical farm, which is a closed environment where crops are grown. Where you need to supplement CO2 because the environment is closed. So, the plants absorb the CO2, then the CO2 is gone, so the plants stop growing. So you have to supplement CO2. And currently, all that CO2 comes from fossil fuel industries, where it's captured, liquefied, put in a metal cylinder, put on a truck, and then delivered to the vertical farm. And Max's vision was, we should put a device there so that these vertical farms take the CO2 out of the air around us. Right, and through the plants, the CO2, and through people eating the plants, the CO2 hits the atmosphere. But when you take it from the atmosphere, you make it circular. So that was his dream. And I said, well, Max, that's great. That's what you should do. You stop with the automotive, focus fully on this, build machines for the global market. He said, yeah, I want to do that, but I don't know how. We are looking for a new CEO. Would you be interested to pick it up? And then I said yes.
Wow. Already learned a lot from that. One thing that I want to understand, because he had the technology, was he actually already planning to build the hardware itself? Because similar companies, sometimes they just, do the innovation and then they license it, for example, to the larger manufacturers, or in this case, to the car producers themselves. That was not an option?
I think he was open to all of that at the time, but it didn't progress as the automotive sector, for obvious reasons, is moving very slow. Right. He didn't have a device yet that you could put at a vertical farm. So, that requires additional effort and also money. So he needed to do a funding round. And he needed to attract more people with experience how to build machines. And that's, he had a group of scientists that were more on like the material science, the capture materials, the methodology. So it was more like the theoretical side of it than that he was ready to build devices.
Yeah. And was he back then like alone in the world with this innovation? Were there like similar initiatives somewhere around? Or was this so specific coming out of the space agency that only they had this knowledge?
I think a company that was founded around the same time is Climeworks, a company much more famous than Skytree. And I believe also carbon engineering. So these were the three companies that were active in the area of capturing CO2 and then, permanently store it or put it to use. Where Max was focused on the automotive business and more on the research. Climeworks started to build a site in Iceland, raised a lot of capital and went another path. And Skytree remained to be an 8-people company of scientists funded by automakers. And then, you can't imagine, when you look back now, there are like 120 DAC companies around the world. There are billions have been and are being invested. And IPCC confirms, and all authoritative sources, and McKinsey and who have you, that we should mature this industry quickly to combat climate change, as we really need to reduce the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. But it wasn't even the case when I joined 2.5 years ago. We were one of the first that started to build machines. And we took the path very, very different than what a company like Climeworks is doing, or a lot of the other DAC companies, specifically in the US. We choose to build products and not sites. And that's a huge difference, and that identifies Skytree as well as, in our philosophy, the DAC market will mature and needs to mature, similar to, for instance, solar panels, by mass manufacturing and not by building sites. Building a site takes you 3-4 years, so you have a low velocity of innovation because you get live after 3-4 years. We have product iterations like every month. Our first product that we brought to market, Cumulus, is a small-scale product, is in its 3rd version now. And we're still the first on the market.
That's basically the residential solution, right? That's the small one that you would be able to put in your living room, basically.
Not in your living room, but in a vertical farm.
All right. Yeah,
no, it's a big American refrigerator on its side, so it's a little bit too big for your living room.
So you joined, you made the decision. How did it go from day one? You ended up in a company with 8 people that was already operating many years without any revenue, right? I mean, there was some income. There was let's say, some sponsoring.
Yeah, R&D fees.
Yeah, R&D fees. Yeah. And then you need to scale that. So where do you start?
Well, I first checked the financial health of Skytree. Because, it's dangerous to join a company that doesn't have money. But Skytree was in good shape, as there was an investment fund from Singapore that invested $400,000 US dollars in 2021 and had a term sheet for $1.5 million for a round of $4 million. And when you have a lead investor, $1.5 million on the term sheet, then that's a great foundation. You will find the other $2.5 million, right? The lead investor is always the challenge.
Yeah.
So I looked at the term sheet and I said to Floris de Bruin, the CFO, part-time CFO at the time, full-time CFO now. I said to Floris, let's ask them to already transfer $500,000 as a convertible loan agreement on this seed round of $4 million. And Floris said, yeah, that's a great idea. I said, okay, let's do that. And they did it. They signed. I said, okay, now it's safe for me to come on board. We got $500,000 in the bank. 1 million more coming. I will get the other 2.5 million so we can get going. I started to recruit the CTO, Wojciech Glazek. Miracle that he joined. He is in the lead today. But okay, back to the funding. So I started, and 1st of February. 24th of February, the war between Ukraine and Russia started. And the management of the fund in Singapore was Russian. And they couldn't access their money. And the money never came. Oh, wow. So the end of March, we were without money. I had to pay 9 salaries. And there was no... So that's how I started.
In another interview, I read that you believe so much in the company that you invested a lot of your private money in this company, right?
I did.
Was that how you rescued this month?
Partially, but also we had great investors that were already in the company before my time, private people. And they were confident in the future. And they said, we'll put money in the company. And then, when you look at how I think we invested in the past 2.5 years, like 20 million euro now. and we're in the middle of another round. And in the beginning, it were people that just believed in the team, believed in the idea. We were not ready for VCs at the time. So that's how we got started, and then we started to recruit people and try to find the balance between speed to market and risk. And one of the risks has always been the funding risk.
Yeah. And it didn't get easier.
Any pre-revenue company has funding risk, right?
Yeah, but also, of course, the war in Ukraine also started the incredible raise of the interests. After that, I think we already have, let's say, more than 2 years of pretty bad climate for financing. Now it's finally getting a little bit lower, so hopefully a bit better for the next years. So there were like incredible hard years, probably to.
Well, let's say it was hard work. Yeah, but we succeeded remarkably well.
And why do you think that you succeeded? Because there are so many companies out there who just don't succeed. So what is it, let's say, the innovation, or is it the team, or are you a great seller? I mean, you have, of course, a pretty commercial background, so maybe you are the one who can sell this to anyone. What is the magic?
I don't think there's magic. For sure, there's an element of being able, as a representative of the company, to convince people about ideas, whether it's employees or partners in the supply chain or investors. But I think the combination of a market that can and now also is show explosive growth. The pole position that Skytree has in an extremely immature market, and also the right audience of investors at the right phase in the existence of the company is the right combination. And you also need to have a little bit of luck that you run into the right people. We were extremely fortunate by being selected by Rabobank to pitch on their Money Meets Ideas. So we got our first wave of private investors from that session. That brought us to life, I would say, after these first few months. I think I started in February. It was May when I was on stage. And then, we went into, this was pre-seed, so we went into seed round. And we got some more professional investors on board. And now we're in the middle of a Series A where we get, more mature, or not mature, bigger funds joining us, like big names. So you have to match your investment audience with the phase you're in. So we're now, almost nearing the end of what VCs can do, and then we're either on our own, or if we need more capital, you go to private equity as the next step. So
it sounds like a lot of work to raise that money, to manage, of course, all the people or the companies who are on board. Does this take like the majority of your time, or are you also still focused on the product and the expansion of the company itself?
Yeah, most of my time is divided in exactly as you say, is raising capital. That's a constant activity. Being the team coach, helping people to be the best version of themselves, being available, creating the organizational fabric to ensure that people can be productive, which is one of the danger zones, I think, of fast-growing company. Hiring people is one, but making sure they don't run around with empty buckets is really a challenge. There's a lot of complexity. And then thirdly, yes, I am deeply involved in technology. In the beginning, also with customers, but there are so many great people that run the market side that I'm less involved on the commercial side. more on the technology, the organization, and fundraising. And I do podcasts.
Yeah, a lot. Yesterday you did one, today you did one.
Yeah, that's a coincidence. Yeah.
So you joined, there was no product yet. So how long did it take you to actually get a product that you could deliver to a client?
Well, quite a while. So if you think of what I said earlier, velocity of innovation. So let me film back. Wojciech Glazek, our CTO, he joined in April 2022. And in July, we had a first product, a DAC unit, that could catch CO2 from the air and then distribute it as an enriched airstream. And we tested this system at Groweye, a vertical farm here in Amsterdam. Our friends, Art van de Keek, he's quite a famous representative of this sector. Great guy. So he was willing to test it out, not too far from here. And this system, it was ugly. There were wires everywhere, but it worked. And it produced 1 kilo of CO2 a day. And it was published on the front page of Vertical Farm Daily, a global e-magazine, and so on. So it was big news, right? A DAC unit for vertical farms. Then I think it was October when we had a 3 kilo a day unit. And that was weighing a few hundred kilos. It reached to the ceiling and it was a monster. But it did 3 kilos a day. Right? And then we decided to pivot the technology. So we stopped the technology we were developing as we thought it wouldn't bring us where. But we learned a lot. So we went back a step, introduced vacuum in our process, which made it quite complex and more expensive. And then in June 2023, we introduced Skytree Model 5 at the Green Tech here in Amsterdam. Green Tech, big agri-tech innovation show. And we won the Concept and Innovation Award. Skytree Model 5. I know I had to come on stage early in the morning. And I was thinking, oh, what should I say? I didn't see that coming, but the sector recognized it as an important innovation. So Skytree Model 5, you can guess it did 5 kilos a day. A few months later, we brought our first product to the market. It was installed by the Wageningen University Research, by a vertical farm in Canada and a few others. And that did 12 kilo a day. Now, we currently produce a system that does 20 kilos a day. And in April next year, our 30 kilos a day version will be shipped from production. TRL 9. Yeah. In the meantime, we started the development of our larger platform called Stratus, which we will ship at the end of the year to the first customer in Canada, and that does 800 kilos a day. So that's velocity of innovation. Yeah.
And just, I'm trying to picture these kilos. Are we talking about powder? Are we talking about liquids? What does it actually?
This is a kilo of gas. CO2 molecules, a kilo. Yeah. I found it strange in the beginning why we talk about kilos, but that's how it works. Yeah. Kilos and tons a day. Yeah. So we're going to a ton a day, and then we're going to 1.8 ton a day. Those are the next iterations. Yeah. And it's all mass production units that are transportable to any location in the world.
And the machines that you are producing right now, are you producing them here in Amsterdam or no?
No, they're produced by a company called Scanfil. We published this recently, who are investing more than we invest in the end assembly of our machines. And that's happening both in Finland and Atlanta in the US. They recently acquired a contract manufacturer themselves in Australia. So we might start production there, but not next year. That will come thereafter.
But I guess that's like a strategic decision not to build the factories yourself.
Exactly. It would take too long. It would require too much capital and also too much risk. So Scanfil is a great company. They are specialized in this. But when you think of, for instance, Minis were built by VDL, right? Not by Mini or BMW. So it's quite, it's quite normal how that works. The funny thing is, we engaged with KPMG to structure our supply chain. We were adopted in what they call their emerging giant program. So you get seniors for a junior fee. They were great here in Amsterdam. They helped us to strategize our supply chain and also select this contract manufacturer. And then we spoke to a lot, RFI, RFP, and then shortlist and scoring. And so then we selected Scanfil. And I remember very well that I was in a call with management, and we were happily sharing the news with them. So like, you've been selected. And then they said, well, okay, so now we will start our due diligence if we want to work with you. Oh, okay. Because they need to invest deeply, so they make their bets as well, right? Yeah. But we are scaling up to a revenue level of €1 billion a year. That's what we're creating.
Wow! And are you the only DACH solution, that they service? Because
of course, of course.
Because you said that
this
in
like
2.5 years, like so many companies popped up, right? So, okay. Yeah. Just to clarify on the business model, so basically what you're doing now is selling machines and you're making a margin, or is there something else? Is there a second stream of income?
Yeah, there's a second and a third as well. The second is maintenance services. Yeah. So that gives a stream of recurring revenue. The benefit, before we go to the third, the benefit of selling machines when you think about financing versus, let's say, SaaS type business models, is the moment you ship your machine, you get paid. Mm-hmm. Well, we ask for prepayment as well, but so your margin hits your bank account at the moment you invoice your machine. So your cash income, your margin income, quickly adds to your cash position. And then these maintenance contracts are invoiced a year in advance. So the cash in is pretty quickly when you look at the business model. That's the benefit of one-time revenue. Then, of course, you need to sell every time. You need to sell more machines to keep that revenue stream going. But the demand is so overwhelming that we're not worried. The limitation is more how quickly we can scale production than if we can sell these systems. The third revenue stream has a little bit more sophistication. We call it CO2 as a service or CO2 as a business, where we sell the CO2. So we sell the CO2 to downstream applications. That can be mineralization to store the CO2 permanently subsurface, or to embed it in building materials, like Pebble is doing in Rotterdam. Great guys and girls that are working on that. But also greenhouses that need CO2. That perhaps don't want to purchase a machine, but just want to buy the CO2, as they do now often. Mm-hmm. But now it's captured in fossil fuel processes, liquefied and then transported to where it's needed. And our machines you can put everywhere where you need the CO2. And instead of charging for the machine, we will also charge for the CO2. And that's a recurring revenue stream. So that's the third one.
Yeah. And you just mentioned that demand is overwhelming. So was that from day one that you started there, or is this something that has changed recently?
Yeah, we didn't see that coming, actually. So in our market focus, we started with vertical farms. That was funny because, vertical farms, that sector was exploding. Also because there was way too much capital flowing in that market segment. It was overfunded. So while we were preparing for a market introduction, that vertical farming market sort of imploded. So that wasn't great news for us. But from vertical farming, we went into focus on greenhouses. And that was a very fortunate choice when we look back, as almost all greenhouses in the Netherlands supplement CO2 in the growth area to boost crop yield, like 30% difference when you grow tomatoes or flowers or cucumbers. But sadly, all that CO2 comes from fossil fuel sources. So the Dutch greenhouse sector is emitting millions of tons of CO2 every year to stimulate plant growth. That's an unsustainable, bad practice. And the sector knows this very well. So there's what we call in Dutch a covenant to phase out fossil fuels, burning natural gas by the greenhouses has to be reduced by 50% in 2030 and reduced to zero in 2040. But if you and there are two supplies for CO2 for a greenhouse. One is burning natural gas on site to produce heat, electricity that you can supply to the grid, and capture the CO2 from that fossil fuel burning process. That will be phased out. So you don't have your local on-site CO2 source anymore. The other supply comes from fossil fuel industries like Shell and Alcoa, where the CO2 is captured in the industrial process, the fossil fuel process, and then transported through piping, OCAP pipeline in the Netherlands, exploited by Linde, or liquid by truck, and then delivered to the greenhouse. Those are the two supply chains. Well, the natural gas will be banned, but also the supply from the industry is going to be reconfigured. As a lot of people know, Shell will continue to capture their CO2, but will redirect it from use in greenhouses to permanent storage under the North Sea, the Porthos project. Yep. That's 300,000 ton per annum, which is currently going to Dutch greenhouses. So you see the supply to greenhouses is drying up. And greenhouses can't do without CO2, at least not in the Netherlands. So we started to focus on greenhouses as a great application, great market for us. And we started to adjust our technology of our bigger system to be fit for greenhouses. And then an investment fund came on board called Horticulture. We were introduced by Rabo to Horticulture. Thank you again, Rabo. And Horticulture is a collectively owned investment fund of almost 300 Dutch greenhouses. Cool. And they saw our technology. They have a real need, an urgent need. And they became our cornerstone investor, and they've invested in us in several rounds. They're a big minority shareholder. And wonderful to work with, as they also came with greenhouses that were willing to be the pilot customers.
Perfect deal.
Perfect deal. Then we were connected to the Wageningen University, where we did our first trials. We're going to do more trials there. They give us the scientific backing of this solution. And the big difference between us and many other of the direct air capture companies around the globe is that we have an immediate and immense revenue opportunity here in our home market. Yeah. And that helps us to scale up quicker than anybody else and take the lead in mass production and cost down of this technology, which is the holy grail on the horizon.
And is that working out well already, the mass production? I mean, you have such a demand and those companies really need it. Can you actually supply them right now?
Not with the largest system. That will ship, the first system will ship at the end of the year to a company called Deep Sky in Canada. It's been widely published. And then the first systems for Dutch greenhouses will ship at the end of Q1 next year. Our smaller system, Cumulus, 20 and 30 kilo a day. We're building up production. So I think we are now at 4 systems a month. And then we're doubling like every month each.
And how does that feel? I mean, to have such a demand, but still, growing the production and doubling that. Is it tense for you to be in that situation? And do you also lose clients because of that? Because there are competitors out there?
There are no competitors.
No?
We sincerely believe that we're in pole position.
Okay.
There are a lot of companies developing this, but before you have products in production, it takes a few years. It's very. I think we've got like 4,000 components in our machine. Before you have a supply chain. I was talking about Scanfil, but Scanfil is not the only supplier. We work with NTS, for instance, a company in the Netherlands, also a big supplier to ASML. That create elements like the vacuum chamber for us. We designed our own electronics that are tailor-made for us, and it's a very complex supply chain. And then it all comes together at Scanfil, who are doing the assembly. But back to your question, how that feels? Super impatient. So we're not losing customers at all, but we are very, very impatient, and so. Internally at Skytree, we compare the development of Stratus and putting our first systems in the field now in a few months' time from now. We compare that with the journey to the moon. And the analogy is that, it's hard. It's almost impossible. It can't be done. We can't build a system at this cost level. We can't build a system on this energy consumption level. And those are the two things that need to change. As now DAC is too expensive and it consumes too much energy. So how do we break through? It can't be done. So what we did is similar to what NASA did when President Kennedy said, we'll go to the moon, and then he talked to the NASA leadership. It's a famous story. He talked to the NASA leadership, and then they said, well, we've got bad news. It can't be done. And then, the popular version is that they were all replaced by young people that came from university, and they put a man on the moon. And they came up with new ideas. And this is exactly what we've done with Skytree. We've got very experienced people like me and Wojciech, our CTO, and Floris, our CFO, and some others in the company. But on the innovation side, we took people from university and we put them in the lead. So our Sandra, our chief people officer, she always says, we hire the best talent we can find in the world. Then we give them everything they need to succeed. And then we get out of their way.
That must be an amazing company culture.
It's a good company culture.
And they're all here in Amsterdam, or because you want the best people? Do you have people remote all over the world who are contributing to this?
I think we're with 108 people now, so 100 more than when I started 2.5 years ago. We have 33 nationalities. Most of the people are here in Amsterdam. We are very fortunate that we are in Matrix 1 at Science Park, the new building. We are so fortunate, so grateful that we were allowed to take a big space in that building while we were so weak on the financial side, and that the Matrix organization took the risk of allowing us in the building. So it's good karma all over. Like I mentioned, the Rabobank Matrix, but there's so many people that want us to succeed. We get so many good wishes and people that reach out to us to help us to succeed. That's heartwarming. That also goes for the employees, the team members at Skytree. People just want to work with us and want to be the best version of themselves. And for me, as as the CEO of the company, my role is to make sure that everybody can be the best version of themselves. Make sure the capital is there, that the circumstances are there, that the culture is there to succeed as a group.
What is the most important reason for those people? Because you said they want to work with you. Is that because of how innovative the product is, or is it because the impact that this company eventually is going to make?
Yeah, the latter. Yeah, people really want to join us because they want to make a difference, which is quite common for younger generations. But we also hired people above 60 that bring very relevant experience, like quality management, for instance, or in the supply chain. And they also switch careers sometimes, get less paid with us. But like, no, I want to contribute. I want to work here. I want to help. I want, like me, I want to use my experience to help a company like Skytree, to help these younger people with all my experience and do something, that my kids want to talk about.
Yeah. There's also sometimes some controversy about DAC, right? And I think you already mentioned it, because at the moment, probably the energy consumption of this solution is too high. You also sometimes hear that it's like an easy solution for companies who just don't want to reduce their emissions. Is that something that's like sometimes holding you back, or is the demand already so big that this actually doesn't bother you?
No, I agree with that point of view. I think it's a moral hazard to use DAC to reduce the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. But that's not a reason to not do it, because there's no choice. Even if we stop all emissions today, we have too much CO2 in the atmosphere. So it's not a matter of, should we decarbonize or take the CO2 out of the atmosphere? We have to take the CO2 out of the atmosphere. And yes, it takes too much energy. Yes, it's too costly, but that's not a reason to not do it. If we would have had the same reasoning with solar panels, it wouldn't have come down 90% as it did.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to go for mass production. But it also inspires us to find solutions. For instance, if you look at energy consumption of DAC, what you don't want to do is plug it in and take electricity from the grid. We do that with our small systems, but not with our large systems, right? Because, then you would compete with the purpose of renewable energy, which is, serve communities and serve companies in the energy transition. So that's not what we advocate. So we do two things. First, we look for the intersection of locations where the CO2 is needed for use or for permanent storage, and the availability of abundant renewable energy. It can be geothermal, can be wind, can be hydro, which can't be transported over 1,000 miles in Canada, for instance. So we use surplus renewable energy that otherwise would be lost because the windmills are shut down or the grid is overflown and, you get all these problems, you can't store it. So we use, the overflow of energy. We won an enormous project in Texas that we will publish as soon as it's signed, but we won the deal, where there's a huge wind park that has an issue because there's too much wind and they can't get rid of the energy. And it's a burden, it's a problem. So there we won the tender to build big, what we call DAC farms, like wind farms and DAC farms. We put them next to the wind farms. And then when there's too much wind energy, we convert it in CO2 that is stored in an empty oil well. So then, you use the power of nature to reduce the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. But also, we built a system that can integrate with hot water sources. Most of the energy in our technology is used in what we call a temperature swing. So at, let's say, outside ambient air temperature, we catch the CO2 molecules in a sorbent material. And then when we heat up that material, the molecules release, right? That's the heart of our process. The heating of the material is where most of the energy goes. So if you find another solution for the heating process, your need for electricity is greatly reduced. And as we only need like 100 degrees for 100 degrees Celsius for a process, we can work with hot water. And when you start looking around for hot water, it's everywhere. Yeah. For instance, geothermal, which we have a lot of in the Netherlands. I was surprised. Greenhouses use a lot of geothermal here. But you can also use the power of the sun in the Middle East, for instance, to heat up hot water. you call it solar thermal. And then that hot water runs through our machine to power our process. So we use the sun. So the earth, the sun, the wind. And then what we also do is collaborate with large emitters who build what we call CCS infrastructures, carbon capture and sequestrations, like Shell and Portos is doing here in the Netherlands. So we don't work with Shell in the Netherlands, but with other large emitters that build this infrastructure. So imagine you have an oil refinery, it's catching the CO2 in the exhaust of the process, the fossil fuel process. So they don't emit the CO2 in the air. Instead, they capture it. Then they liquefy it, or they make pure gas out of it, and then they transport it through pipelines to the empty oil wells where they got it from in the first place. This is happening all around the world. That's great. Now imagine that next to the oil refinery we build a deck park. Not in free nature where we have to cut trees like is happening in Wyoming or whatever. So we build a deck park at the industrial site next to the oil refinery. We take their waste heat from their process to power our machines. We use their piping. We use their storage sites. We use the capital and their expertise. And we work together as climate tech and large emitters to solve the climate problem. That will go much faster, and then it's not competing with renewable energy for consumers and companies.
Sounds like a plan, right? So what is holding you back to achieve that? And what are your goals, for the company? So is this something that you actually want to realize together with the industry in like 3 to 5 years? Or do you have different, let's say, short-term, mid-term problems to solve first?
We have a lot of obstacles and challenges, but most of the risks are behind us. And we have a large pipeline of projects, both with industrial partners, as well as dedicated storage partners, as well as users of CO2, like the Dutch greenhouses, but also North American greenhouses. For us, it's sort of indifferent, as we build universal machines that produce CO2 from the air. Yeah. And where it's used for, of course, we're interested, but it doesn't change our technology. So what we want to achieve is build those machines, put them to use, solve the energy dilemma that we just spoke about in the way we just spoke about, and increase production so that we can cost down. We want to be the cost leader. We want to bring DAC within the boundaries of economical viability. That's already the case for some applications, which for us can already be billions of revenue. But we really want to contribute to climate change by bringing this technology in reach of the economical and energy models so that it can be used everywhere. So that we stop using fossil fuel generated CO2 everywhere in society. That we only use CO2 that we take from circular sources like the air around us. And then the CO2 that we still produce in fossil fuel processes has to be stored underground. That's the transition of CO2. We see it as one universe.
You're very passionate about this. I see that.
Yeah.
So what is your personal next step or responsibility to make sure that you're actually going to have this global impact with the company? What do you still need to do? Because you said that most of the risks are behind you. So you can also consider that it's just a matter of execution.
That's a little bit too optimistic.
Yeah. Let's simplify it. What do you still have to do?
We still have to close a next funding round. Hopefully the last, but who knows? So that's never done until it's done.
Yeah.
We have sufficient runway, but not to bring us to cash positive. So we need to go to the capital market once more. It's looking okay, but it's not done until it's done.
Do you think you can get all the resources on the capital market, or should you head for an IPO, for example, with this company to get enough resources to really make global impact?
No, I don't think IPO is the right instrument for us. That would be such a distraction. Yeah. I think there's enough capital. As I said before, we are We still are in the VC community, although we're quickly growing. So there will be a time that we switch to PE if needed. But we also get non-dilutive funding. So we already have a working capital arrangement with Groenfonds and Rabobank. We're looking at asset financing for CO2 as a service with big capital providers globally. Our customers are prepaying their payment schedules so that we don't have to fund our supply chain from equity.
That's a big win already.
Yeah, that's a big win. We're very transparent to all our partners in the supply chain and in the financial community. So there are multiple sources of cash coming in. And then, as I said, I mean, when you start shipping your units, you get cash in from margin on your machines. Then there are more non-dilutive sources of capital available. And let's say half a year from now, we hope to be in that luxury position.
Are you enjoying this ride?
I'm enjoying it.
You happy with your decision?
Sometimes not. I think, why didn't I just mind my own business and live the luxury consulting life? But no, of course, I get up usually before the alarm clock again, and I'm immediately switched on. And sometimes there are bad days when you have a setback on technology or with something else. Usually there are good days when we make a lot of progression. But it certainly energizes me. And this is the last thing, I'm doing in my career.
That's your masterpiece.
Yes.
What is still the biggest risk? I mean, I can also imagine that with a company that right now actually delivers machines to the market, there's the risk of copycats who maybe, I don't know, you have all the stories about China, right? That they just copy any technology out there. Is that a risk for you, or is it hard to do what you're doing? Is it a sort of magic in there? You have patented technology, right?
Yeah, we have a whole collection of patents. There's already patent discussions going on in the background. I don't mind if I think we are already copied, also with our business model. I don't think being dependent on IP protection is a solid foundation under your company. I think our velocity of innovation, our ability to execute, our decisiveness, and bringing together this great group of talented people who actually are developing their, fourth, fifth generation of deck technology. I think that sets us apart from anybody else, and that will be very hard to close as a gap. Also, we have a very strong home market here in the Netherlands with the Dutch greenhouses that will allow us to immediately scale up, as we're not depending on these sites that take 3-4 years to develop. If you come from China, you want to sell to Dutch greenhouses, you first have to learn to speak Dutch. Good luck with that. So no, I'm comfortable. I don't feel threatened by competition, and competition is good. Competition, make sure you keep running and not become, leaning backwards or resting on your laurels.
Yeah. But I guess also, let's say, the Dutch brand. Are you branding the company a bit? Is it like a unique selling point for you that you guys are actually from here, that you are so close to the greenhouses? Or
Yes, in the greenhouse sector, we are really insiders. We have a lot of network and ecosystem here with opinion leaders like Division Q, Corporate Crest, Horti World Center, Wageningen University, Delphi, Horticoop, Lingezegen. They're all front runners. They're all famous worldwide. They're all thought leaders.
And you're in the center of this ecosystem.
And the greenhouse sector is such a great, innovative sector. I mean, when I read the news, my heart bleeds where they're known for, with foreign workers and the like. People have no idea how innovative this sector is, how they're turning to sustainable food production. And there are always front runners and people that lag behind. And the the focus is in the Netherlands always on those few greenhouses that are a little bit behind with all of that. And then we enlarge that and point fingers that we should better build apartment complexes where these greenhouses are. Well, I do not agree with that view. People have no idea how important the Dutch greenhouse sector is, how much innovation comes out of it to sustainable food production worldwide. So thank you for giving me a few seconds.
This is your last adventure you just mentioned. How will you measure the success of this adventure for you personally, for the company, and also, let's say, the environmental impact? Do you have something that you're aiming for here, or you just give yourself a couple of years?
Yeah, I don't have like a quantified goal, or I'm not driven by money, or I just want the company to succeed. And what success is, that our technology works, that we have a net gain in the carbon footprint measured by LCA values, that the company can stand on its own legs financially. It's not depending on the financial community anymore. That we have the highest NPS score, that we have the highest eNPS score, that we're known for a company that really takes ESG seriously, not because we have to comply, but because we want to comply. So that's when I look back, what I would like to look back at.
And will you be a consultant again after this company?
I don't think so.
You're done.
Yeah.
But it actually sounds that it's already a success, right? You have a great team, you have motivated people, you have machines working, you are scaling up the capacity constantly.
Yes, you're right. As I said, the biggest risks are behind us, but there are still challenges to take. And step by step, or mile by mile when you go to the moon. But it is in sight.
Yeah. And are there any lessons or fuck-ups that you would like to share with our listeners? Something that you would like to have known before you started this adventure?
Well, there's certainly a long list of that. There's nothing that really stands out. We have had all the accidents that most of the startups had. We had to say goodbye to people that we thought were great and wonderful. Didn't appear to be. We were disappointed so often that we thought this investor will invest, and then we got like this 2-line email saying that we've decided to pass on you, and the usual list, I would say. Nothing that really stands out.
What would be then, to conclude this episode today, what would be your best advice to other founders of climate tech business who are scaling their business in this still pretty challenging climate, with a financing market that's becoming a little bit better, a local government here that is not optimal, I would say? What advice do you have?
I would say never be afraid of failure, because it's better to fail than not be successful.
It sounds like advice from a very wise man. Thank you so much, Rob, for this interview today. All the best with Skytree. It sounds like an amazing company with great technology that will actually have impact. So thank you for doing that. And good luck with your pitch on the Climate Tech Summit, the 22nd of October.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Rob, for your time, amazing story, and openness. What an amazing innovation. I truly believe this is the type of companies that we need to make a difference. For sure, your story will help and inspire other entrepreneurs in their journey who are facing the same immense challenges. In the next episode, I will talk to another inspiring guest from the climate tech industry. So I hope all of you will tune in again. If you don't want to miss the next episode, subscribe to this podcast via Spotify, Apple, or Podimo. Thanks, see you next time, and have a great day.